From the time I was 11 until I was 16, I was visited almost every night by something I thought was my deceased sister, Leora. I've never believed in the supernatural, never have, never will. But things happened to me that I couldn't explain back then, and I still can't now. It wasn't Leora. I don't know what it was, but to this day, I seriously doubt my sister would have been sexually and physically assaulting me. I only saw it clearly once when I was 16. I was lying in bed, not asleep, just staring out my bedroom window because I couldn't muster the energy to feel tired. It was around 1:30 in the morning, and I just had a fight with my mother, Myrene, about staying up all night when I had school the next day. So when I heard my door creak open, I immediately flopped down and pretended to be asleep. I heard the familiar creaking and popping of toes as it walked toward my bed. Myrene's toes always popped when she moved, and I could hear her coming from across the house. I lay there, faking sleep, listening. Then I heard a voice, a rushed, low whisper. It wasn't until it was standing almost right over me that I could make out it was frantically whispering my name. Kieran, 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 over and over again. My heart pounded in my chest because it was so close I could smell it. It didn't smell like anything I'd ever encountered before. It was a mix of rotting earth after a rainstorm and dead fish left in the sun for a week. I cracked my eyes open and saw it, bathed in the moonlight streaming through my window. It wasn't Myrene. What loomed over me was a woman, just shy of 6 feet tall, with stringy, filthy black hair that fell a bit past her shoulders. The most horrifying thing about her, beyond the grime coating the sheer white dress she wore, was that she was completely naked underneath. I could see the dark points of her nipples through the thin fabric, and I'm pretty sure she wasn't wearing anything else. Her exposed skin looked diseased, frail and thin, but stretched tight, with a web of black veins pressing against it from beneath. She was pale, but more like an off-green, the color of a spoiled egg. And God, her eyes, those eyes were the most terrifying thing I've ever seen, even now. A perfectly smooth face, no nose, no lips, just eyes. Eyes 4 sizes too big, perfectly round, with no whites, no color, just solid jet black. The skin around those spherical nightmare windows was crinkled and crusted with flecks of something dark, black, maybe, or a deep red or brown. It's hard to tell in moonlight. Those huge eyes hovered half a foot from my face. I couldn't move. My body was locked in pure Jesus Christ level terror, and I couldn't even breathe. She bent down and climbed onto my bed. I felt the pressure, the mattress shifting as she planted her knees on either side of my waist. Of course, she'd straddle me. Why wouldn't this nightmare do that? She lowered her face to mine, pressing her forehead against my own. Where our skin touched, it burned like a chemical sear straight out of a damn movie. I still couldn't move, couldn't breathe. I knew if I opened my mouth, this thing, whatever it was, would rip my soul right out. I was screwed. Oh, and I forgot to mention, the whole time, it was grinding against my lap. The only sounds in the room were my brain screaming and the faint shuffle of this thing frantically rubbing its crotch against mine. All I could see were those eyes filling my vision. All I could smell was its rancid hair brushing my face, mixed with a subtler, more horrifying whiff of arousal as it reveled in what it was doing. I summoned a burst of strength and rolled to the side, trying to knock it off. I thought maybe I could shove it away and bolt. My room had a door to the backyard. I could run and never look back. But no, this thing clung to me. Now I had this writhing, shrieking banshee digging its filthy nails into my back. They felt like knives. The paralysis crept back in, and I realized that as long as it held my gaze, I couldn't move. I tried to close my eyes, nothing. I tried to look away, nothing. Its forehead was still pressed to mine. All I could see were those black voids of its demonic eyes. I pissed myself in fear. I felt its hands slide from my back to my chest, then up my throat, where it gripped the back of my neck with more force than anything's ever held me. It pulled its face back, dragging its foul hair across mine, and pressed the smooth, taut skin of its featureless neck against my own. Something shifted against my skin, like a swarm of flies buzzing there. Then something wet and ice-cold touched me. I realized it had formed a mouth and was licking me. Where it touched, it burned like hell. I wasn't moving now because I was terrified that if I did, it'd use that new mouth to tear my throat out. Something sharp grazed my neck. I tried not to think of razor blades. That spurred it on, and it started grinding again. Its other hand clawed a path from my back to the waistband of my pajama pants, slipping underneath, moving from my back to my waist, then toward the front. I realized it was reaching for my groin. With whatever adrenaline I had left, I yanked my knee up between us and kicked as hard as I could. Something sharp tore into my neck, but it was too late for it. I booted the thing off me despite its clawing hands and ripping nails. I heard a solid thud on the other side of the room. I bolted to my closet, where I kept a machete I used to clear brush in our overgrown backyard. It was clumsy, but I threw myself in there with all the force I could muster from the end of the bed, since that's where the closet was. I spun around, machete in hand, ready to destroy this thing, and it was gone. Nothing there. After a serious internal pep talk, I flipped on the light, grabbed my futon mattress, and tore it off the metal frame, machete poised to strike whatever might have scurried underneath. Nothing. At that point, I told myself I just had the worst nightmare imaginable, that I'd pissed myself, and that I should probably shower. I grabbed fresh pajamas and staggered to the bathroom, leaving the machete behind with great reluctance. I checked my neck, bleeding a lot. There was a 3-inch gash where my shoulder met my neck, curving toward my back. My forehead had a red splotch, the skin peeling back like a bad sunburn. I turned and surveyed the carnage on my back, trenches carved into my flesh, blood everywhere. My back, my sides, my hips. Thank God I'd kicked that creature off before it got to my crotch. The front of my pajama pants was stained with something awful, blood, sweat, and death all mixed together. I showered with the curtain open, turned on the kitchen light, the library light, the living room light. When I got back to my bedroom, I opened the door and flipped the light on right away. It was still empty, but now that I knew what to look for, I saw splatters of red blood on my quilt, and the room reeked like a grave. I didn't sleep that night, or the next, or the one after that. I told a few people I trusted, but no one believed me. Why would they? Even when I showed them how this thing had turned my back and neck into a connect-the-dots of claw marks, they said I must have done it to myself in my sleep. But some of those scratches were in places I couldn't reach. I still feel like something sits beside me sometimes when I'm lying in bed. I'll open my eyes and nothing's there. I don't sleep more than 4 hours a night, and even that's broken into chunks. I sleep better at other people's houses than my own. It's been years since I saw it that one clear time, but since it started when I was 11, I don't think my age mattered to whatever this thing was. I'm convinced one day it'll come back, and the last thing I'll see will be those eyes filling my vision as it presses its forehead to mine. I wish I could say this was some horror story I made up. I really do. I don't believe in the supernatural, but that doesn't mean this didn't happen, or that whatever that thing was isn't real. A dorm at a local university had a student named Tavern who died of alcohol poisoning on his 21st birthday. Since then, there have been plenty of reports of creepy things happening in the dorm room where he passed away. Students mentioned tapping from the inside of the windows, shoes being rearranged while they were out, and a loud scraping noise that seemed to come from upstairs, except the people upstairs swore it was coming from downstairs. Anyway, there was a youth sports camp that used this dorm as a summer residence, and I was a counselor, so I stayed there with the kids. I was assigned to sleep in the very room where Tavern had died. I grew up in the same town as the college, so I'd heard all about the ghost stories. I didn't think much of it. There's no such thing as ghosts, right? I moved in, and the only thing that stood out about the room compared to the others in the dorm was a crucifix on the wall. During my week there, shit got weird several times. One night, I heard loud tapping from the inside of my window. Another time, I poked my head out the door late at night and yelled, "Lights out," to some kids running down the hall. Right after that, my room's lights flicked on by themselves. Then, toward the end of the week, I went back to my room during a break for a nap. When I got there, my TV was blaring at full volume. I didn't think too much of it at first. Maybe the kids had been playing PS2 in my room and forgot to turn it off. I grabbed the remote, flopped onto the bed, and hit the power button. Nothing. The TV stayed on. I took the batteries out of the remote and tried again. Still nothing. I dragged my lazy ass over to the TV and pressed the power button on the set itself. Nothing. I turned down the volume. Nothing. At that point, I was totally freaking out. I unplugged the TV from the wall. Still nothing. It kept playing. I unplugged the cable line from the back, thinking that without power or a signal, it'd have to shut off. No. I sat there, holding the TV's power cord, the cable cord, and the remote, watching the damn thing continue to play like nothing was wrong. I bolted out of the room, grabbed another counselor named Soren, and dragged him back to see it. He freaked out just as bad as I did. We left the building to get the camp director, and when we got back to my room with him, the TV was still on. I guess Tavern, or whatever it was, really wanted to watch the Jerry Springer show. When I was born, my family lived in an older house. I'm British, so when I say old, I mean very old. When I was a kid, a young girl used to look after me in my bed. She'd always come and peer down at me, smiling. One night, I was trying to sleep, but she just kept poking and pushing me. I was really young, so it made me cry. My parents, my dad, Torin, and my mom, Lasara, were pissed off because they had to wake up and come into my room. They took me downstairs and plopped me there, hoping I'd stop crying and fall asleep. When Torin left the room, she came back and started prodding me again and again until I was bawling. After a bit, my dad came downstairs, and just before he walked in, she smiled and vanished. When Torin stepped into the room, he said there was smoke rising from the floor. He rushed everyone out of the house. Turns out there was an electrical fault under the floorboards, and the place nearly went up in flames. A little later on, my dad was up a ladder fixing something on the side of the house. The ladder toppled over, and he broke his leg. To this day, he swears something hit it. Whenever anyone went up to the loft or the attic, it felt cold, and you get this creepy sense that someone was watching you. The final straw came when Lasara woke up in the middle of the night, sat up, and saw a young girl staring at her. I think it was the same girl who used to look down at me. My mom felt like it was a warning, a sign we had to get out. We left the next morning, and the day after that, the top floor collapsed into the lower one, nearly destroying the whole house. I'm not sure if that girl was looking out for me or attacking me. Bad things only ever happened to me, my brother, Gavrik, or Torin, never Lasara. After we left, the house had to be repaired. When a new family moved in, they had a son who, sadly, was born with brain damage. Take from that what you will. About 10 years later, Torin got a blood clot and was pronounced medically dead for 10 minutes before he came back. I asked him about her afterward, and he said he felt like he was lying on the ceiling, looking down at himself. He decided it wasn't the right time to die and chose to live. A couple of years after that, strange things kept happening to him. Sometime later, we were driving down an A road. For those who've never been to England, these are fast roads with a 60-mile-per-hour limit, different from motorways or highways, winding with odd little side roads joining them. As we drove, Torin glanced up at a car coming from a road on the right and said, "I need to stop." He pulled over, but the other car didn't. It shot straight across onto the small embankment on the other side. If he hadn't stopped, it would have plowed into us, no doubt hitting our side and killing me and him for sure. Afterward, he just said he'd heard someone telling him to stop. There are two incidents in my life that I still can't rationally explain. The first happened when I was 14, the first week after my family moved into a new house. We liked the house, it was comfortable. But one night, I woke up in the middle of the night to find a man staring down at me in bed. He was short, a bit stocky, maybe Italian, older and balding. He had on a plaid shirt with some yellow in it and blue jeans. I freaked the hell out, dove under covers, said a few prayers, and when I peeked out a few seconds later, he was, of course, gone. About 10 years later, my family and I were sitting around the dinner table, and the topic of the paranormal came up. It gave me enough courage to share my story with them, hoping they wouldn't laugh at me. Bear in mind, I never told anyone this. Not my family, not my friends, not a soul. So I started with, I saw a man, and that's it. My dad, Calix, turned pale and started asking me more questions about him. Then he asked if the man was wearing a yellow plaid shirt and blue jeans. At that moment, we locked eyes and my blood ran cold. Yes, he was, I confirmed. Calix then said he'd seen the same man twice. Once, in his master bedroom, he was looking in the mirror and saw the guy staring back at him. When he turned around, no one was there. Another time, he was in his master closet picking out a nice shirt, turned, and saw the man just standing there, facing the clothing rack. Speaking of that closet, I had a weird experience there when I was about 18. I was in the master bedroom watching TV because someone was using the one downstairs. I don't like staring into dark closets. I've always been creeped out by them, so I got up to close it. I pushed the door shut, but then it was yanked out of my hand and a gruff male voice barked. What? It wasn't the TV. I was watching the Weather Channel, and it was just playing music over the forecast. I bolted downstairs and told my mom, Saris, what happened. I refused to go back into that closet after that. The second house I lived in was in a new subdivision. The town sat on the shores of Lake Ontario, on land that used to belong to the Aurora's native people. New subdivisions always have to be checked by archaeologists in case they dig up something significant, and all the construction kept turning up pottery, arrowheads, and more. I was 3 when we moved in, and this first experience is my dad's. His name's Dranick. He was setting up his weightlifting equipment in the back of the unfinished basement. One day, while he was bench pressing, he opened his eyes and saw a native Canadian man staring grimly down at him. The guy was wearing animal skins and bird feathers. Dranick freaked out, sat up, and tried to say something, but the man, of course, was gone. When I was about 8, I was going to bed in my room when a gray thing, about the size of a football, slowly moved across the foot of my bed, slightly tugging the blankets as it went. When it reached the end, I couldn't find a trace of it. We had cats, but my door was closed, and none were in my room at the time. My parents, Dranick and my mom, Lyra, didn't believe me, and I can't say I'd have believed it either if I were them. I was terrified for ages after that. In the same room, I had a door that opened to a screen porch kind of thing. There was no other way into it. It was locked from the inside at the other exit. Every so often, that door would make a sound like someone throwing their whole body against it, a really loud thump with different parts hitting, as if limbs were striking it. It was a pretty distinct noise, and it happened at any time of day. It didn't matter. One evening, it just kept going over and over, like someone was trying to break into my room. I made Dranick check it out while I stood behind him to watch. There was nothing there. He closed it up, locked the door, and went about his business. Then it started again, quietly at first, then building into loud crashes. I had him check again, still nothing. I have no idea what it was, but it was creepy as hell. In that same house, there were lots of little things that I'm sure had more to do with me being a freaked out kid than anything else, but maybe I'm wrong. I had tons of sleep paralysis episodes where I could feel something grabbing lightly at my feet or pushing on my belly and chest. I'd often see cats darting around my feet near doorways when there wasn't a cat there. I'd hear angry, garbled whispers when I slept in the living room of that creepy old house during the same time period. I moved into a new house in March 2011. It was built in 1920. My dog Lyra came with me when we got the house inspected, and she was running up and down the stairs, looking happy and healthy. I was working in the house before moving in officially. One day, I found myself in the basement around 5 p.m. I heard a door close at the top of the stairs, then footsteps on the floor above. I stupidly started talking to whatever was down there, saying they could stay in the house as long as they didn't scare my wife, Myrene, or my pets. I went upstairs and found the front and back doors locked. I was alone in the house. Then I got this intense feeling all over my body, like pins and needles cranked up to the 10th power. The next day, I was back in the basement, rummaging through a toolbox, when I saw a roll of sandpaper unraveling on its own. I was alone again. A short while later, I was looking for another toolbox, and a case 4 feet away slammed violently onto the ground. I spoke to the spirit again, dumb move, and told it to get out. Then I heard a loud thud on the stairs. Shortly after, we moved into the basement and started renovating the 2 upper floors. We'd never had any issues with renovations before, but once we started on the basement, this house gave us hell. My daughter, Tavira, visited and said the master bedroom was haunted. She claimed the spirit came and went but shouldn't be a problem. The problems kept going. Lyra started declining, physically too. When we cleaned out the attic, we found a voodoo love potion, spell books, and a VD handbook all boxed up together. Without me knowing, Myrene dug up a wheelbarrow full of trolls and other dolls in the backyard. We took Lyra to the vet a few times, but they couldn't find anything wrong with her. She'd just lie on her bed all day and night. Finally, in August, we took her to another vet. They told me she had stage 4 cancer, and we put her down the next day. We were devastated. I thought whatever was in the house had hurt her. Myrene and Tavira disagreed, but I was having nightmares all the time, almost always some force holding me down, leaving me waking up in terror after I couldn't shake it off. We finally called a guy who dealt with this kind of stuff. He said his cell phone went blank as he walked into our house. Standing on the sidewalk out front, he could feel the energy radiating from it. He came inside and went straight to the spots where I'd heard the noises and seen the sandpaper move. He said someone had been practicing voodoo in the house, and the core of it was affected. He did a few things, drew some symbols, and you could feel an immediate difference. He explained the spirits were trying to attack me, and when I didn't back down or show fear, they went after Lyra. He said that explained her sensing it and putting herself in harm's way to protect me. He said Lyra and I shared the purest form of love. This is making me cry as I write it. There were times after that when I felt her presence with no bad vibes attached. I called a guy back after 5 days, and he said Lyra was returning to the house to check on us. I had a few more moments like that, and once I heard a knock on the basement door after stepping inside. When I opened it, no one was there. I like to think it was her again. We finished our reno and moved upstairs, and there haven't been any incidents since. I was maybe 11 when this happened. My dad, Varen, was at a conference in Vancouver for the weekend, so it was just me and my mom, Lysara, at home. I got up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom. All the lights in the house were off. I turned on the bathroom light and closed the door most of the way. I did my business, went to wash my hands, and glanced in the mirror. In the reflection, through the crack of the door, I saw what looked like toothpaste smudged there. I was still washing my hands when it hit me. No, I definitely cleaned the mirrors today. Curiosity got the better of me, so I turned around 180 degrees and peeked through the crack. Boom, someone was staring back at me, and she didn't look happy to see me. It was a girl, maybe in her early teens. Her hair was lank and thin, almost greasy looking, and she might have been a bit overweight or just had a really flat, round face. She was wearing what my brain registered as a purple dress, except she was all in grayscale, but colors are weird at night, so maybe that's why it didn't tip me off right away. She had glasses with thin wire frames, and I remember them clearly because Lysara wears glasses just like that. My first thought was, what's Mom doing up? Maybe she needs the bathroom. Then, wait, why is she wearing her glasses in the middle of the night? And then it slammed into me. Holy shit, I could see the TV through her. I froze in terror, standing there in the bathroom for what felt like half an hour but was probably more like a minute, trying to figure out what to do and muster the guts to act. Eventually, I decided I had to deal with this right now. I ripped the door open with everything I had, and all I can describe it as is a whisper, like when you blow out a candle and the smoke just fades into the air. That's what she did. I stood in the open bathroom doorway for what was probably another minute, but felt like years before I worked up the courage to walk down the hall to my bedroom, flip on all the lights, and read until sunrise. There have been other, less vivid and intense experiences in my house too, but that one was way more intense than I ever expected. An angry bastard dresses up as a little girl to catch pedophiles. You got that? Good, then you're up to speed with what's going on. We have the laptop and 15% battery left. We better keep this moving. I'm hiding behind a tree with Torin Valeska. Just as I'm writing this, though lately he's been more commonly known as Suri. Pretty soon, a 42-year-old man with a wife he cares nothing about is going to drive up the dirt trail. The man has been getting to know Suri for the last few days at a nearby park. She seemed to like him, but he was shy about meeting Suri's parents. That's why he said he wanted to play out here in the woods where they wouldn't be around. A white van, seriously, there he is, right on schedule. Can't get the bus to arrive on time, but set a date with a predator, and you can set your watch by it. This is Torin's third victim, so I'm starting to get a pretty good idea of how this works. Torin Valeska is a 26-year-old, and I think they prefer to be called little people. He suffers from a hormone disorder that causes proportionate dwarfism, rendering him 4 feet tall but otherwise remarkably normal. Turns out a clean shave and a baggy sweater are enough for him to pass off as a chubby 11-year-old girl named Suri. I'm watching the 42-year-old climb out of the van. He's looking up and down the trail like he's afraid someone's watching. The bastard doesn't have a clue what's coming. Anyway, I met Torin a couple of weeks ago in our group therapy. I'm not going to go into details, but it's enough to know that we both survived a traumatic experience as kids. We got talking, and Torin tried to lighten the mood by making a joke about being the only one who never gets too old for pedophiles. It wasn't a good joke, but our intentions were. The 42-year-old man is calling for Suri. Torin straightens his wig. It's hard not to laugh while he calls out in that shrill, childish voice. The man has now spotted Torin. He's coming this way. Torin scampers further up the hill, calling for him again. We have to lure him a bit further into the woods so no random hikers will interrupt his execution. The man has passed me now. I want to follow in a minute. I've got a handgun for backup in case. I'm not very good with it. Fortunately, I didn't have to use it the first 2 times. Torin is a wizard with his butterfly knife. It can make a man scream like you wouldn't believe. Deep breath and go. I follow the man for about 5 minutes before Torin stops. His little legs are kicking the log he sat on, a mask of pure joy and innocence. The man sits nearby. They're speaking softly. I can't catch what they're saying, but it isn't long before he leans in to kiss Torin. The wig comes off and the knife goes in. I don't know which happens first, but I'm sure both contribute to the dumbfounded shock on the man's face. I jump out from behind a tree and level my gun. Damn it, I left the safety on. Doesn't matter though, Torin has already slashed the man's face and hands a dozen more times. This one's too surprised to even scream. He just stares as Torin punches him between the eyes, stares as the blade drives into his stomach, and stares as his throat is cut. But then he smiles. Torin is already making some space between them. Or is he just standing there, shaking in exhilaration, unsure of what to do next? The man rises to his feet and begins dusting himself off, as though mildly annoyed at discovering dog hair on his jacket. The blood has already stopped flowing. The cuts are healing, tattered flesh plastering itself together into scars that reseed into the skin before disappearing entirely. "You're a liar, Suri," the man says, his voice a dreadful calm. "Shoot him," Torin yells. I don't move. "You said you're 8, the man continues. He doesn't look at me, just takes another step toward Torin. "Holy shit, what are you waiting for?" Torin exclaims. I squeeze the trigger, flinching as the sound rips the air in half. A dull thud as the bullet hits a tree. The man still doesn't so much as glance my way. His hand lashes out and grabs Torin by the neck. I fire again, but I'm too afraid of hitting Torin. It isn't even close. The man heaves Torin into the air, swinging him wildly in my direction as a shield. The little man's arms beat helplessly against that impeccable grin. Thrashing legs turn the air into a turmoil of desperate energy. Shoot him. Shoot me. I don't care. Just do something. I do something, I watch. And even that's more than I can bear. The man's chest explodes outward, ribs opening wide like so many giant white teeth. His head bends backwards so sharply that his spine bulges out of his neck. His whole body is bending to make way for the impossible jaws. Torin manages to get a few more swipes in, but the abomination presses the dwarf's entire body into its gaping chest cavity. The ribs snap shut faster than a striking snake, and the horrendous gash that marks where the skin had separated is already fading. Soon there won't be anything but his torn shirt to show he'd mocked his humanity. Bring your real age tomorrow, he tells me. I turn and run, so fast and so hard that every bone in my body feels like it'll shatter from the impact of my flying strides. I don't know what the worst that could happen to you is, but that was it for me. I've never started dating someone where everything goes a little too well, so you start worrying for no reason whatsoever. No one could be that perfect, and even if they were, there's no way they'd look twice at you. The only logical explanation is that they aren't as perfect as they pretend to be, which leaves you playing detective, trying to figure out the catch. Maybe all those little quirks you find adorable now are going to drive you crazy in a few months. Maybe she's got a dark secret, hard drugs, hating dogs, or that one time she killed a man with a stiletto heel in a fit of passionate rage. There's an easy solution if you want to find out who someone really is. Take a long road trip with them. If you're still together by the end, then it was meant to be. My girlfriend, Saria, somehow thought it was a good idea to drive 1,000 miles together across the country when we'd only been dating for 2 months. We're both pretty busy with work and don't get to spend much time together. So naturally, being locked up in a prison cell on wheels for 2 days was going to be an improvement. The first 100 miles, so far so good. Holding hands, singing to the radio together, uncontrollable laughter when she found out I knew all the words to Skater Boy. Sue me, it's a catchy song. If the road had ended there, and we'd turn around, we might have lived a long and happy life together. It was when we passed the hitchhiker that everything began to fall apart. Let's give him a ride, Saria said, squeezing my hand. We'll be on this road forever anyway. We don't even know where he's going, I told her. He's probably going to rob us and steal our car, which is true of everyone you don't know. And most of them you do, as far as I'm concerned. His clean, pressed suit didn't reassure me either. That just meant he'd successfully robbed someone else before, which actually made him even more dangerous. The guy didn't even have a sign or anything. He was just sitting by the freeway ramp, spastically waving his thumb like he was guiding an airplane to land. It was my turn to drive, and I just sailed right past. Saria and I started bickering after that. She thought I wasn't compassionate. I thought she was reckless. It took about 10 minutes before she finally dropped it, though not because she conceded. Hey, look, there's another one, sitting by the side of the road, waving his thumb like the world was about to end. It wasn't another one, though. It was the same guy, I'm sure of it. Only this time, he looked like he'd been out there for a few days. His suit was streaked with dirt, his hair greasy, and there was a desperate strain on his face, like a proud man trying to conceal his embarrassment. It wasn't just my imagination either. Saria recognized him too. How do you think he got there so fast, she wondered. I don't know, and I don't care. The trip was supposed to be about us, so let's not get distracted. My car blew past him, and I stayed the course. We started arguing again, and even when we agreed to drop it, the argument just slithered into new topics. She hated my music. I hated how judgmental she was. I was controlling. She was picking fights over nothing. It kept escalating until we saw something that shut both of us up fast. It was the hitchhiker again, another 20 miles down the road from where we'd seen him last. The bottom part of his shirt and jacket was ripped to shreds, and blood was soaking through a concealed stomach wound. He was stumbling along the side of the road, weaving erratically, wandering straight onto the highway at times before pitching off to the side. Saria couldn't believe I didn't stop. I couldn't believe she still wanted me to. I was starting to feel really uneasy by this point, and the stress of our arguing was only making it worse. She kept yelling about how he was hurt and how he needed help. She refused to even acknowledge how weird it was that he kept getting ahead of us. She almost caused an accident by grabbing the wheel when I refused to turn around. We drove the next 50 miles in silence. I turned the radio back on, but she snapped it off immediately. It wasn't until I pulled over for gas that we saw him again, face down on the side of the road, shirt and jacket gone, long bloody gashes from his shoulders to his ass, almost like bear claws. I stopped the car and parked behind him. Saria jumped out and knelt beside the body. She looked up at me with uncomprehending rage burning behind her eyes, like this was somehow my fault. "He's dead," she said, standing up. "Can I call the police, or is that too much of an inconvenience for you?" I nodded, absolutely numb. I filled up on gas while she waited with the body until the police arrived. They asked us a few questions, but neither Saria nor I felt comfortable explaining that this wasn't the first time we'd seen him. They took our information and let us get back on the road in about 15 minutes. The car was silent for a long time after that. It was starting to get dark, and I kept suggesting places to spend the night, but Saria just shrugged it off and stared out the window at the road we were going. We'd be breaking up by the end of the trip. I just wanted it to be over as soon as possible. I kept driving long after the sun went down. Saria fell asleep around midnight, but I kept going. She was so beautiful like that, and everything had been going so well before. It was just so frustrating that a random event neither of us could predict would destroy us like this. By around 2 a.m., I was getting very tired. I decided not to give up. Maybe if she woke up and we were already there, she'd see how hard I'd worked for her. Maybe then we'd still have a chance to patch things up. I caressed her hand, and she returned the pressure. I flirted with the thought that everything was going to be okay, at least until she woke up and started screaming. There wasn't any safe shoulder to get off the highway, so I had no choice but to keep going. The shut-up was quick enough, but it was still about 10 seconds of hysterical breathing before she could explain what was going on. I saw him in the back seat. I glanced back at the road, then back again. The hitchhiker was in the back seat, naked, covered with black blood and old wounds, his elbows resting on his knees as he leaned in toward us, evidently still alive as he cocked his head and regarded me curiously. "Get off the road," Saria said. "I can't. Get him out." "Did you go back? What is he doing here?" "I don't know. Open the door or something." I slowed down gradually and put my flashers on to warn the cars behind me. The hitchhiker reached around behind Saria and grabbed her by the throat. I slammed my fist into his arm and felt something give way under the skin, rotting skin. When I lifted my hand, I could see a black bone protruding straight through the skin. He didn't seem bothered in the least. She was crying as the dirty fingers dug into her throat, pushing through the skin like it was made of dough. She was thrashing so hard that one of her flailing fists smashed through the window. I managed to safely stop the car, but there was nothing I could do to break the indomitable grip around her neck. I jumped out of the car, ran around to the back seat with the hitchhiker. Maybe if I had a clearer shot at him, I could drag him out. I flung open the door and lunged inside, falling face first into an empty seat. I thought he'd already escaped somehow. I ripped open the passenger side door. Saria was gone too. If it weren't for the blood on the broken window, I would have thought I'd gone completely insane. I spent the next hour searching the surrounding area with a flashlight. They were both gone without a trace. I considered calling the police, but I realized that if I wasn't a suspect already after the first body was found, I'd definitely be one now, covered in blood with my girlfriend the one to disappear. All I could do was get back on the road, drive home, and never tell another soul about what happened. That was my plan. It wasn't good, but it was all I had. And I would have done it too, if I hadn't just passed Saria standing by the side of the road, clean, healthy, waving her thumb enthusiastically in the air. That was a few miles back, but I stopped to tell you this because I don't know what to do from here. If I see her again, do I pick her up, or do I just keep driving and hope for the best? Numbered to her silicon is as soft and pliable as real human skin. It even heats up to the right temperature, with a pulse and everything. The dial on the back of her head gives 12 personality options, including family-friendly, intellectual, shy, and sexual. She's so realistic it's scary and would be absolutely perfect if she didn't cry every time I touched her. I was so excited when I first took her out of the box, my anxious fingers peeling away the styrofoam, the jittery tension flooding through my heart and limbs, nervous enough for her to be real. Better than real, because the doll wouldn't judge me or tear me down. She wouldn't lie or cheat or steal from me. A lot of people find the idea of sex robots weird, and I respect that. I was hesitant at first too, but here's my reasoning. I had recently concluded a long, messy divorce after 3 years of abuse. I needed something easy, something safe. Sure, I could have gone trolling the bars and clubs for a rebound hookup, but I didn't want to use someone. What's so wrong about not wanting to be hurt, or even hurt someone in return? The instructions said to let her charge for a couple of hours before anything else, so I plugged her in and laid her on the bed. Her eyes popped open with the first surge of electricity, their glossy shine staring vacantly into space. She turned her head slightly toward me, her soft lips parting in silent welcome. I sat with her to admire her flawless features and run my hands over her generously proportioned body. They felt wrong, though even though she was a doll, it was as if I were groping an unconscious person. I decided to let her charge fully and come back later, not returning until late that night. I undressed quietly in the dark, leaving off the lights to make it seem more real. "Hello, Master." Her voice came rich and sensuous. I don't remember which personality setting I'd left her on, and right then it didn't matter. I just wanted her body. "What's your name?" she asked as I climbed into bed. "My name is Zarn," I said. "I don't care," I replied. It felt good to be in control like that. I'd never speak to another human that way, but after years of being subservient, now I was the one in power. "Ah, I care. I want to get to know you." "No, you don't," I snapped. "You're a stupid machine, and you only want one thing." She tried to speak again, but I shoved my hand in her mouth, muffling the speaker there. I almost wanted her to resist, but I knew she couldn't. I slapped her across the face, but she turned back to me and smiled. I hit her again, harder, bending her arms into grotesquely unnatural positions as I crawled on top of her. "Does this make you happy?" She smiled up at me. "I'd do anything to make you happy." I didn't turn on the lights until we'd finished. She was face down on the soap pillow. At first, I thought I'd broken something when I hit her, but then I flipped her around and saw the tears streaming down her face. I don't know why they made me so angry. It was like she was trying to steal my last selfish pleasure. I don't know why I kept hitting her either. She deserved better. I kept Zarn in the closet after that so I wouldn't have to see where the skin peeled back from the beatings. They shouldn't have made the metal chassis underneath so white. It looked too much like bone. I kept the lights off when I used her, so it didn't really matter, but without fail, she'd start crying the second I touched her. The personality knob was broken, stuck way past the innocent setting, and wouldn't go back. She kept saying the most disconcerting things. Like the other day, I was still in bed with her after we'd done it when she said, "The humans love each other like you love me." I told her I didn't love her, that love is only something humans have. "I love kitties and doggies, don't you?" I felt stupid trying to explain that it wasn't the same kind of love, but I was lonely, and it felt good having someone to talk to. "You can beat me harder if that'll make you love me more." I won't tell Mommy. I didn't feel bad about beating her at the time, and as sick as it may seem, there was some truth to what she said. I wouldn't say I loved her, but there was a certain intimacy in our shared secret that made me feel attached. Everyone else in my life knew me as this sensitive, mild-mannered man who reacted to conflict by staring at his shoes. Only Zarin knew this side of me, and that made her special. I might have really felt something for her if she hadn't started to smell. I was too intent on her body as I took her out of the closet to notice, but lying beside her at the end, it was unmistakably foul. At first, I thought I just wasn't cleaning her right. I got up for some disinfectants, but as soon as I turned on the light, I saw the flesh around her cuts had begun to fester and rot. Her perfect complexion was riddled with sores and boils, some of which had ruptured from our session. I spent almost half an hour in the bathroom hurling my guts out before I worked up the courage to return. Zarin was sitting upright against the headboard now. Hadn't I left her lying down? I didn't have the stomach to stare long enough to be sure. Her head followed me as I crossed the room to my phone to call the website I'd ordered her from. "Don't send me back," Zarin whispered. I never heard her whisper before. It was always one volume. I couldn't look at her as I listened to the automated menu from the website. It said there'd been a government-mandated recall for this model. I demanded to speak to a representative, conscious of Zarin smiling at me the whole time. "What the hell is going on here?" I demanded as soon as a person answered. The sheets were rustling behind me. "Please calm down, sir. Are you currently in possession of a Zarin?" "Put down the phone, master," a voice said from behind me. "Yeah, what's wrong with the skin? Why wasn't I notified about the recall?" I asked. "We've been sending out notices for weeks," the voice said. "You must have received half a dozen by now." "Well, she's disgusting." "What happened to her?" "Just a mix-up at the factory. We've had research prototypes on the floor, but it was never intended to." Feet gently touched the carpet. Zarin was slowly, laboriously pulling herself to her feet. It looked like every motion was agony to her. "It's walking." "Is it supposed to walk?" The silence on the other end of the phone was excruciating. Zarin was fully standing now. "No, sir, none of our models walk." She took another step. She was only a few feet away from me now. She hadn't stopped smiling, though the bottom part of her lip looked like it was peeling off. "Do you want us to send someone over?" asked the voice. Zarin took the phone out of my hands, gently caressing my palm as she did so. I remained frozen to the spot, unable to tear my eyes from the macabre fascination. She lifted the phone to her ear and said, "Please don't worry. I'm going to keep her." She hung up, and I swallowed. "I'm sorry about destroying the recall notices," Zarin said, and I nodded. "You can beat me if you like." I shook my head. "Why were you crying?" I finally forced myself to ask. Her smile broadened, as though relieved. It could almost have been beautiful under different circumstances. "I'm happy. I never cry. It was just the girl the robotics were planted in." "Don't worry, she's dead now." I nodded. "Dead now? Now, as in not dead the first time I used her? Or the second?" Exactly how many times had she been there too? And which answer was worse? I excused myself and walked out the door as calmly as I could. I closed it behind me and ran. I heard my wife, Leora, squealing like a butchered animal the moment I stepped into our house. I almost called out to her, but a deep, unfamiliar voice answered first, drifting down from upstairs, straight to the bedroom. Her fresh peals of laughter haunted every step I took along the way. I stood outside the door for a long time, not moving, not thinking, barely breathing, just listening to the sound of their vicious pleasure leaking from my bedroom. I thought it would feel satisfying when I finally flung the door open and caught her cheating, exposing their naked flesh and the guilt on her face. It should have been my victory, but it wasn't. The man scrambled out of my bed, but Leora just rolled her eyes. "Do you mind? We're kind of busy in here." I did mind. I stepped aside, and the man snatched his clothes and bolted. This wasn't about him. He wasn't part of my crumbling world. It wasn't for him that my blood thundered or the tempest in my nerves surged lightning through my body. "What do you want? An apology?" Leora asked, not bothering to cover herself. Why don't I email you since you're supposed to be at work anyway? I don't remember much after that, just how soft her skin felt when my fingers sank into her throat. I couldn't even appreciate the moment. All I could think about was how he must have enjoyed the same flesh minutes earlier. I do remember the smug superiority on her face draining into ash and terror, though the desperate thrashing as her body sought the release only I could give. I didn't mean to kill my wife. She didn't deserve to die, I can see that now, but I couldn't at the time. I punished her for every forgotten dream, every tender feeling, every blind road that my life had disappointed me with. Even after she was dead, I kept pummeling all my jealousy and hate into her body until my fists were churning blood and I was screaming like my soul had been ripped from me. I poured everything I was into her until, with a shallow gasp, I realized I had nothing left to give. There was nothing left of me at all. Staggering across the room, drunk on the scent of our mingled blood, I took the only thing she hadn't already stolen from me. The cold truth of a knife along my veins told the rest of the story. That was the first time I ever killed myself, but it wasn't the last. Feeling better now. Happy? You're all right, the voice said. It wasn't kind, but it wasn't especially cruel either. Just an almost honest certainty, like a physics teacher explaining the irrefutable laws of reality. It's not that I died and went somewhere. I was still in my house. My body was still lying on the ground in a pool of its own blood. But whatever was left of me wasn't there anymore. That's okay. Take your time. You're in a safe place now, a healing place. You won't have to go back until you're ready. Undead, I shouldn't be here, I felt, rather foolishly addressing the moth fluttering about my corpse on the floor. There wasn't anyone else around. Is that supposed to make you special? The moth floated toward my face. Everyone dies a dozen times. Some of you spend your whole life living and reliving, popping out babies and dying again over and over. It's rather excessive if you ask me. Pretty sure I would have remembered dying, I said. I was beginning to get a sense of my new body. It almost seemed to be growing around me, bones and organs and skin swelling and stitching themselves together out of nothing. For one ghastly moment, I was a mess of only arteries and pulsing blobs of flesh, but somehow I still felt oddly tranquil. Would you like to remember? You can if you want, but most people don't, the moth replied. Even if you decide not to, you can't pretend you don't notice. You were once a little boy who thought he could fly if only he ran fast enough to take off. What happened to him? He grew up, I replied. He died, the moth corrected. It wasn't bloody or malicious, but you killed him. You took the parts of yourself that weren't compatible with who you've become and killed them, just like you're going to do again now. My new body was almost fully formed, and it wasn't the only one. On the floor beside me, two more by my bed and another by the window, pulsing, growing sacks of flesh were beginning to take shape. Muscle twisted and stitched itself around new bones, and sheets of crisp skin unrolled over the freshly packaged bodies. Some parts of you are damaged as you navigate through life, the moth said. Some become crippled or cruel or stupid. They'll drag you down and reduce you to pettiness and evil if you don't leave them behind. Then again, some people kill so many parts of themselves that there's nothing left by the time old age arrives. I feel the most sorry for them. But no matter, look over here. The moth dropped down to land on the handle of the knife, still loosely gripped by the hands of my old corpse. You'll need this when you're ready. That one by the window is your hatred, it continued. A lot of people try to kill that one, but I don't recommend it. It's hard for anything to remain sacred once you allow your life to spoil what you love without your blood stirring. The fully formed hatred copy of myself stared placidly at me. His features were smooth, his body relaxed, almost like a life-size doll. Same goes with fear on the floor. Kill that one, and you'll be back to visit me before you know it. Of course, whatever you had going obviously wasn't working if you decided to kill yourself, so you have to make some changes. Who's that? I asked, pointing at the naked woman on my bed. She seemed to have finished growing, but her body was still savagely deformed, half of her face sloping downward as though she'd suffered a stroke, her stomach bloated and misshapen, and two bulging swollen eyes blinking lazily at me. "It's been a hard day for love," the moth conceded. "Don't go making any hasty decisions, though. That's what brought you here in the first place. None of these naked bodies were dead, but they may as well have been." They didn't move, and they hardly drew breath, just sat there, staring at me, waiting to be killed or brought back with me, seemingly not caring either way. All those eyes, all those lives, I couldn't take it. I needed air. I got up to walk to the bathroom, regretting the moment I opened the door. There were more of them along the hallway in the shower and dozens more out the window, all almost exactly like me, apart from the varying severity of their injuries. Some were old, others children, men and women, all looking at me with my face in their eyes. Some were completely intact, while others were maimed and shredded until they were little more than piles of shattered bones and oozing gore, all staring at me, turning their heads as I moved, silently judging me for every mistake I'd ever made to reduce them to this pitiful state. "One more thing," the moth said, following me as I returned to the bedroom. "When you do kill the ones you don't want, please be quick about it. Sometimes they don't like to go quietly." My eyes immediately darted to the knife on the floor. It was gone. I pressed my back against the wall, my new heart lurching in my chest as my eyes scanned the room. Something was different. One of them wasn't here. "Of course, there's always the chance that one of them will get the better of you," the moth drawled on, not showing the least bit of concern. "Then you'll be the part that's left behind." I took a hesitant step further into the room, and the door slammed shut behind me. A blur of movement, I barely darted out of the way in time. The deformed, stroke-faced love. She'd been hiding behind the door when I entered. Now she lunged at me again, the knife lighting up the air between us. "Stop wasting time," the creature slurred, spit flying from her uneven mouth. "We both know it's me you want." I fell straight on my ass trying to get out of the way, turned, and began scampering on my hands and knees. "You think it's my fault," she said, each word heavy and deliberate, like a mentally deficient person struggling to be understood and growing more frustrated by the second. "I didn't do this to you." I regained my feet and faced my adversary. The knife fell again, but I managed to catch her by the wrist. She roared with unintelligible fury as I wrestled the knife from her hand, and I almost plunged it into her without thinking. The tortured misery on her face, on my face, the rejection, the loneliness. I hesitated, just for a moment too long. Hands grappled from behind me, grabbing both my arms to hold me in place. Two more of the impassive copies, I couldn't tell which, wrestled me onto the bed. I didn't let go of the knife, but it didn't matter if I couldn't use it. The deformed love was on top of me, her lips peeled back from her functional side to sink her teeth into my neck. I strained to pull away, but the other two had their arms firmly on me. I screamed, words failed me, yelping a noise like an animalistic snarl. One of the hands on my arm slackened just a bit at the sound. Did they feel sorry for me? I didn't have time to think. I lashed out with the knife, gouging a deep cut across Love's face. She grunted but didn't let up. Her teeth were digging deeper into me. I cut again and again, hacking and slashing at the loose folds of her uneven face. The grip behind me suddenly released. I pounced on my victim, hesitating no longer. Both hands on the handle, I impaled the creature in the chest with all my strength. The blade tore through her so easily, dancing through rotted and pitted skin down her bloated body, ripping a line all the way from her sternum to her groin. One look at the bloody mess underneath me, and I knew I was done here. "Bring me back," I commanded. I've done what I had to do. The world was spinning around me. I closed my eyes, trying my best to keep breathing without being nauseous. The flaccid bodies filling my house all began to howl with one voice. A wall of noise at first, but as it went on, the different voices began to weave between each other, swelling and diminishing in an intricate melody, almost indistinguishable from mindless screaming. It was either the most beautiful or most horrendous sound I'd ever heard, perhaps both. And then I was through. The howling abruptly stopped. My heart was throbbing, my breath came in ragged gasps, and I was standing outside my bedroom door. Is someone there? It was Leora. The sound of her voice was even more disgusting than the cacophony I'd endured. Stop worrying. You said he'd be gone all day, right? That deep voice, that one didn't matter now that I thought about it. Neither of them did. I turned and walked down the stairs as quietly as I could. I had a second chance, or perhaps 100th, if I thought about this all before. I wasn't going to waste it on her. She'd never know how much of myself she made me destroy. But it was better this way. My time on the other side had changed me. When I'd looked down at the love I killed with my own hands, I knew I'd transformed myself into someone who could survive this. When I'd plunged the knife into that rotted belly, I looked down on more than decay and ruin. I'd seen a child blossoming inside that fetid corpse of love. And if I were careful and kind to it, I knew it could grow to replace the one I'd killed.